Hello. In this demo, we'll show how to use Jenkins and multiple Docker executors to set up multiple slave environments where we can execute different types of projects. So for this particular example, I have a C project and a Java project, so which I'm going to execute in two separate Docker executors. So regarding my environment, I have a Ubuntu VM machine that is running on top of my Windows. So I'm running Docker master and slave in the same VM. That's not advisable for a production purpose. As a prerequisite, so we have to run Jenkins container. So that is what I'm doing here, and we have to have integration of Jenkins with Docker and GitHub. So we can do that by by manage plugins. Here we can install the necessary plugins. So assuming you have done that, so the next step would be to create the Docker slaves for building the two projects here. So I already built this, so we'll just walk through what is the configuration here. The first slave I have created is a slave to build a C project. So this is my Docker URL. I'm exposing a Docker engine using port 4243 here, and I have a Docker image which is my Jenkins slave. So if we look at what is the Docker file associated with this, so this is my Docker file for the C project. So here we are installing whatever are the tools necessary to build a C project. So here we have installed GCC and the make kind of tools. So from this Docker file, we will create the Jenkins slave image, which will build our C project. And if we go into the next setting, so we have created a label here. This will be useful when we spawn build jobs. We'll select the label on which the build job is supposed to run. Then we put in the credentials, and the one important part is, like, we have also mounted the volumes so that the binaries that are created from the container, we copy it back to the host machine. So this is the C programming Docker slave for building the C project. And then I have one more Docker slave, which is Jenkins slave in Java. And here I have a separate Docker image, my Jenkins project in Java. So if we look at the Docker file associated with that, so this is my Docker file for that. So here we have installed Maven and any other tools that are necessary to build the Java project. Other than that, I have a different label for this Docker slave. So that is another configuration. And similarly, I have the volume I have mounted here. Okay, once we are done with this, we can save this. So this would set up the configuration part would be handled here. And then in terms of the project itself, so I've already created two projects. So let's look at the configuration within the project itself. So if we look at the C project configuration, the settings that we have, we are asking this project to be built as a container, and we are restricting this project to be run in the label that we have created earlier when we created a Docker slave. And we are asking this project source code to be picked up from this particular repository. So this particular project is a simple project to to list down the list of primary numbers. So these are the two projects that I am using for this for this particular use case. One is this primes project, and the another is this for the Java case. I'm using this game of life project. So these are projects that were available in the web. I'm just forked it for my purpose here. So this is basically the GitHub repository, and here in terms of, there are two options when we want to make a build. So in my case, I am polling the GitHub repository for changes, and for every 5 minutes I'm building it. The reason I'm doing it is my Jenkins is not exposed directly to the internet. But if your Jenkins is directly exposed to the internet, we can use a build trigger so that whenever there is a change pushed to GitHub, it will automatically trigger a Jenkins build. And the last step is, how do we build this particular project. So I have used a build step with execute shell, and I'm listing down the steps in terms of configure, make, and the last step is copying this binary to the bin directory in the container. And because it is mounted to my bin directory in the host machine, we should automatically see it there. And I've already done one run of this particular project, so we can look at the successful run here. And if we look at the console output associated with the run, so we can see that it is doing the autogen here, it is doing the compilation here, and at the end of it, it's copying the binary to the bin directory. And this is the next project, the Java project. The configuration is kind of would be similar compared to the C project that we created. I'll show where the differences exist. So the main difference is in terms of the label expression here. So I'm choosing a different Docker slave, which will use a different Docker image to build this particular project. So here I've chosen a Java Docker image. And then here the GitHub repository I've chosen where the Java project resides, and the build approach is pretty much the same as the C project. And the last thing that is different here is in terms of how do we compile this project. So I've used Maven targets here and asked it to do a clean project, and once the project is successfully built, I'm asking it to copy the war file to the bin directory. And so if you look at the console log, again I have already run this project once. So if you look at it's basically pulling the the necessary jar files here, and at the end of it, so here we see that the project is built successfully and the war file is copied to the bin directory. Now if you look at the host machine itself, so this is my host machine, and I can see the two binaries. This is from the Java project and from the C project, successfully copy here. And we can also see that the container, the slave container that is spawned, has already been killed. And this is my the Jenkins log itself. So here we could see the Docker slave that gets terminated. So basically every time we kick off this build job, a Docker slave would be spawned with the container we have specified, the build would be run, and then then the slave would be killed. And that way we are we are back to a clean slate where we started. Thanks for watching.